Hello, I would say good morning, but good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Welcome to Good Intentions and Bad Outcomes, a podcast about challenges and practices that you might encounter in the workplace, where good intentions have unintended and often unnoticed consequences. I'm Hino.
And I'm Wayne.
Hi, Wayne. Every time we share a situation that we or one of our listeners have seen in the workplace, and that is challenging in some way. We discuss the what and the why, and then we try to come up with alternatives on the spot. So let's get started. What's the topic of today, Wayne?
We got an interesting topic today. I think we've seen it a couple of times in different businesses that we've worked with before, and I'm sure you've probably encountered this too. But it's the idea of local optimization. So,
Mm,
just to kind of explain what this is about, we see a problem or an issue, or perhaps just an opportunity for improvement in an area, and we think, hey, we're going to do this great job. We focus in on you know uh, optimizing or making that area better somehow. And we think we're doing a good job, and it looks like it's improving the system. But in the end, it actually, because we're only considering a part of the problem, we're actually making things worse, or we're slowing things down even more than they were before. And that's the unintended outcome of looking at just a piece of our system of work. So the term
but
used for this is usually local optimization, because we're all optimizing just a local piece of a bigger system.
that's right. And you said unintended, but also, as we said in the intro, it's also unnoticed oftentimes, right?
Mm,
Because
yeah.
the system or the subsystem that is all optimized, we're going to make this concrete in a second, but the subsystem that is optimized oftentimes doesn't even know of the consequences it has on the outside world. So let's figure out an example. I got one. I can talk specifically around a set of delivery teams. So software delivery teams, they all work together. There's challenges in getting features across those teams to production, right? So they need one another. They're dependent on one another in order to deliver some value for their end user. And so one of those teams is awfully focused on, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I use awfully as a word, but they're very
Hmm.
focused on doing better, on delivering faster, delivering more with higher quality, all that kind of stuff. Good stuff, right? Things that you want
Yep.
them to do.
Sure.
And so they're doing this. They are optimizing the way that they work. There's more stuff than ever that they are delivering. And they deliver it with high quality, so nobody needs to worry about the outcome or about the impact that it has from a quality perspective. They don't need to invest, or the total cost of ownership is fairly low. All of that stuff. So fantastic. The only problem that happens is when you're looking at the broad picture, nothing still gets to production faster. The reason
Right.
is that there's a tremendous amount of dependencies. All those dependencies need to be satisfied. The other systems or the other parts of the system are not going faster. So
Yeah.
while you have this one team that really puts the effort in of getting better, and we want to continue and to encourage them to do that, of course, right? We don't want to discourage them.
Yep.
You actually are building up more inventory. That's what it's called in a lean context, inventory or work in progress in the system. Everything that this team now has produced is waiting for another team to pick it up. That has not sped up, and that as a result cannot process these things fast enough, right? So that's kind of one example of this issue. Do you see any others, Wayne?
Yeah, I got two sort of in similar contexts that I've come across before. One that slightly bigger context. I worked with an organization one time with multiple IT teams, and we had a whole area goal of improving the speed of the IT teams, and we were measuring things like deployment frequency, and
Mm,
trying to help the teams to write code in short iterations, and to have it tested and ready to deploy, and actually deployable every 2 weeks or more frequently even than that. And they were pulling back from the 3 to 6 month deployments, trying to get down to 2 week deployments, and they are actually doing really really good at it. But I came across an excuse. I would call it an excuse. It wasn't really, but kind of a reason why they didn't want to do that. They said, "Yeah, we can deploy sooner than this, but the business doesn't want us to."
Yeah,
They
the
only,
client is not
yeah,
ready.
they,
They
they,
can't,
they
they
want.
can't deal with the change. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So why should we deploy every 2 weeks when the business is telling us to wait for 6 months?
Hmm.
And it is true. We weren't considering. We were locally optimizing the delivery teams, but the business piece was not being given a proper attention. And it was a difficult question to answer. Why would you deploy if the business is telling you not to? So we had other things to focus on other than just the teams. Second is a slightly smaller example. It's like within a team. So developers were writing code very quickly, but the QA people were testing rather slowly. There was a lot of manual testing. So one of the efforts was to try to make the QA team more efficient, maybe introduce some automation so we could test more quickly. Maybe we could do test-driven development and test in advance, those types of things. So we were working on the QA team to get that going, and they actually worked quite a bit faster, but we didn't see any overall um, significant change in the speed of delivery right to production because although the QA was going faster, the whole entire system was still slow. So there
Yeah.
were other things besides testing that needed to be given attention to.
Yeah. So where does that come from? Where does that problem come from? Clearly, the intent is there, right? The intent is to optimize. Period. I'm going to keep it at
Yeah,
that. So the
that's
intent
right.
is to optimize. The intent is to go faster. The intent is to put less effort in and still getting the same results or even better results. Um, all of that intent is fantastic. That's really what you want. Is what you want the teams to focus on and so forth. So where is this going wrong?
Well, I think one of the problems is that we tend to fixate on whatever is in front of us. And so when we see a
Mhm.
problem, we think that that's the problem, and we lock onto that. We try to solve that, but it's almost like the proverbial blinders on the horse, where we're not seeing the rest of the system. And often the thing that's right in front of us that we have to deal with it every day, although it might be a problem, is not the biggest problem. There are other things around us that would probably speed us up a lot more or optimize us much better if we just focused on them instead.
But wait, this is my problem, so it must be the biggest problem, right?
That's right, exactly. Yeah,
No, so you're right. It's oftentimes about not like you called out the metaphor, which makes a tremendous amount of sense that you don't see what's happening around you. And what often is it starts from a different place, in my opinion. It starts from a place to where teams or people or wherever this local optimization is happening um, do not really consider the bigger purpose.
right.
They are a cog in a machine, and what is they know what the purpose of the cog is, but they don't necessarily know what the purpose of the machine is, and that's really what they need to consider. Now, it's not easy, especially let's say that you're a newbie, you're coming out of school, or you just moved companies, changed jobs, and you're coming into a new team. Of course, you can expect these folks to really understand what the purpose of the entire machine is.
Right,
I mean,
right,
some people are going to get it faster than others. It kind of depends on how far away from that overall view you are, and it depends on how much experience you have and whether or not you've been in something like that before. But regardless, it will take some time to actually see that bigger picture, and it requires quite a bit of collaboration to get to that idea and to try to figure out what is actually blocking you in the entire system. And we're talking about a system. We're not talking about a software system or something that you install on a computer. We are
right.
talking about the system of people and interactions and processes within an organization that together deliver this value to their users or this service to their users. A system in the context of complex adaptive systems. And we really need to look at that entire system holistically and improve that in order to deliver to our clients faster. And one of the things, for instance, a great example that you gave, I had the same thing, by the way, with a client where the customer was not ready to accept new functionality every 1 week or 2 weeks. And the reason for it was that the way that they did training was not scalable.
Right.
So what essentially happened is, as soon as there was functionality available, then they needed to go off and design training for each and every one within the organization. It was a lot. It was for some national post office. So there was a lot of teams that they had to, or a lot of individuals that they had to train. And because that was such an old way of thinking about how people needed to be trained in classrooms with test systems and so forth, that these things could not be enabled until everyone was trained. And it took forever, right? So what it required was a change in how the training was delivered before we could actually speed up delivery of features. Another piece that, when you were talking, that I was reminded of was the disconnect between deployment and release. Like even in your situation where the business was not ready to accept new changes, you can still deploy. Just make sure that you deploy it in a way that you don't turn it on until the business is ready. Then the team who is optimizing their delivery is not slowing down. They are testing and verifying and ensuring that the risk with every single deployment remains small, because that's why you want to have small deployments. So the smaller the change that you're putting into production, the smaller the risk that something will go wrong and that you've broken something. That's why you want to have it. Things that are easier to fix as well, because the changes that you've made are more local, they are more known, and as a result, less code needs to be analyzed before you can actually find, if anything goes wrong, what went wrong, and then also to fix it. So there's a lot of good things that you can do there as well. So looking at the system as a whole and say like, okay, hang on. In this case, what is really the problem that we're trying to solve? Is the problem that we're trying to solve deploying, or is the problem that we're trying to solve switching the functionality off for your users, right? So so it's really looking at that problem of the entire system holistically, looking at all the interactions, because that's really what makes up the complexity of the systems, the interactions between the individual subsystems and elements of it. And that's what you need to look at. And not everyone is necessarily equally experienced in doing that, and automatically triggered or motivated to look at the larger system, right? So that's definitely something.
Interestingly,
go ahead.
That's exactly what we did with that team, was decouple deployment from release as a first step. And that allowed them to still optimize themselves, but work within the whole system. And then our focus then began to shift over into the business. How can we work with product owners and business people to appreciate the value of small incremental changes that happen rapidly? But it was a whole different thing. And it is a matter of considering the whole system. I'm thinking of a couple of different techniques that might be useful. I don't know if you've got any ideas or things that you've seen. So I think something like value stream mapping, for instance, where we visualize the whole system of work from end to end, is a first step in kind of understanding all the parts of your system. Things like theory of constraints then can help us identify the bottlenecks, the biggest bottlenecks. There will always be bottlenecks in your system. It's just which is the biggest one and which one do you want to attack first. And then I was quite surprised when I learned some of the Deming management method, where they talked about a system of work and optimizing pieces of it. When you're looking at the complete system of work, you may even want to de-optimize a part of it so that another piece of it could become more optimized. So you might actually, when you're looking at the whole thing, you might actually say, no, I want to slow this piece down and actually make it what appears to be worse, but it's not really, because the overall thing happens to become better when you tweak this piece of it here. So it's a holistic view, right?
It is. I have some great examples of that, but I'm not going to go deeper into it because we're running at almost into our 15th minute. But what you're just referring to, a lot of that can be read in the book The Goal by Eli Goldratt. And I have some anecdotes, especially from Japan as well, from my travels into Japan, where I saw some of these things play out in the real world. which is quite interesting. But it might be some nice topic for a next time. Well,
Exactly.
thank you, Wayne. This was a great conversation. I wish we would feel comfortable giving our listeners a half an hour podcast, which I don't think is the greatest idea. So that's it for today, though. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I certainly did. I could have kept going today. If you have a situation at work in the past or right now that you feel has unintended bad outcomes, let us know, and we might discuss it in one of our next sessions. Thank you so much, Wayne. This was great.
Thanks, Dino.
Take care.
See you.